the Mines and Minerals Act is clause 20 that speaks to what is referred to as the local content. The local content is basically the provision of the Mines and Minerals Act that dictates that anyone who is carrying, any mining activity must prioritize the locals in either jobs or contractual, undertakings. This is the only way it was envisioned by the crafters of this law that the locals would be able to participate meaningfully in our mineral wealth. Right. Remember that the locals do not have enough resources to be able to push into mining operations, because mining operations cause for serious investment, and most Zambians today do not have that capacity to be able to undertake mining operations like that of KCM, Mopani, as well as FQM. So the only way it was thought that Zambians would retain some form of wealth out of our mineral resources is if they were allowed to participate in the mining activities, right, either as employees, so meaning that preference whenever it came to jobs must be given to Zambians, unless the particular skill needed was not found among Zambians. That's when a mine company should go and source for that expertise elsewhere. Yeah. When it comes to products that are manufactured in Zambia or that can be manufactured by Zambians, that particular clause 20 dictated that mines should be able to buy, any mining company should be able to buy any such product that is manufactured locally, unless they needed products that are not manufactured locally, then they can go and source elsewhere. Whenever a mining company needed to source for contractors, they needed to prioritize the locals. That is a piece of legislation that has sort of tried to give more or less opportunities for the locals. But I would want to say this, that even when we have this particular clause in the Mines and Minerals Act, the implementation of this clause has not been sufficient. There's been several engagements, and I've been part of several discussions, especially when I served as District Commissioner for Kitwe, where mining suppliers and contractors had called on government to ensure that this particular clause was effectively implemented. Interestingly, the New Dawn government has decided, as they are trying to repeal the Mines and Minerals Act, to completely remove this provision of the law. For whose interest? Nobody knows. Obviously, to advance the interest of the foreigners, because what that would have meant had that law gone through, had that bill gone through, is that now the mine operators were now free to do as they please. There was not going to be a need dictated to by the law for them to support the locals, either as employees or as contractors.
Is it not an oxymoron, as people would say, to see that you have a government that says we are going to support small enterprises and create a ministry? In the meantime, you are removing a law that must empower those same small ministries those small enterprises for whom you have even created a ministry. This disjointed approach, if you like, to implementing what the government intended to do. Does it look like it's a matter of trial and error, or they are doing it intentionally?
I think that slowly we are beginning to see the UPND government as an enemy of the Zambian people, because clearly they've continued to advance the interest not of Zambians, but the interest of foreigners. This is not the first time we are questioning the decisions of the UPND government, particularly in the mining sector. You remember when 2023, when they decided to change the tax regime to allow mineral royalty to become deductible. We question that decision because it advanced the interest of the foreign multinationals. Okay, where government was getting a revenue, government decided to forgo that revenue for the promissory note of, no, we are going to make investments in the mining sector, we are going to grow production of copper up to 3 million in the next decade. The opposite, unfortunately, is what we are witnessing today. So we can clearly see that there's been serious collusion between the decision makers and those mining giants. The same applies with this decision. You cannot take away or do away with the law. The only law that protects the locals, you decide to put it aside. The question would be, whose interest are you advancing? That is why many people like myself have been speculating that it looks like behind the curtains, some of these decision makers are being induced, being given money to do or to make decisions that do not further the interest of Zambians, but decisions that further the interest of the foreigners.
Are you convinced the proposed removal of that clause that promotes the interest of locals could have been deliberate?
Yes, it was. It was deliberate, because even if it was not deliberate, remember, when we initially discussed or interrogated this particular proposed amendment, we could have, obviously we understood that it was first moved by a gentleman who did not understand mining, because it was first brought to Parliament by an acting minister of mines then, who is Minister Honorable Elvis Nkandu. We had thought that at that point he did not have a full understanding of what he was presenting. And so, because we noted after interrogation that they had removed this provision, Honorable Kangombe decided to seek, or rather to push for an amendment, that this particular provision of the law that has been removed, can we have it included? At that point, if this was not intentional, the minister would have been magnanimous to say, wait a minute, I think that we unknowingly omitted this provision of the law. So well done, let us now include it. But he continued to be adamant up until yesterday, when just everyone in Parliament, left and right, agreed that this does not make sense. He was still adamant, which is why we are very convinced that the intention to remove that provision of the law was very deliberate. And one can only conclude, why did he try to do that?
Some of you debating, of course, taking advantage of your privileges of the House, you were debating mentioning bags of money, linking it to perhaps those deliberate. Were you making an allegation that someone may have been paid to deliberately mutilate the law that would disenfranchise, you know, the local Zambians?
I think that the decisions that our friends in the UPND are making can only indicate that people are being induced. I would give you an example. I think that if you followed parliamentary proceedings, including today, I was challenging the Minister of Mines. In whose interest would a minister be making a decision such as allowing a mining company that owes government $1 billion in taxes, decides to forgo that $1 billion and only request for a $23 million? In whose interest would that be? And how can that decision be in the interest of the public, if not for, private interest?
You have consistently raised this point, but the Minister of Finance has not adequately responded.
In fact, I challenged him today. There are two issues we've raised. We've raised the decision that the Minister of Mines made, where FQM decided to transfer $2.5 billion from a Zambian domiciled account into Panama without the approval of the board, which board is ZCCM-IH sits on. And that matter, I think, started around 2019. It was before the police. Ironically, our friends in the UPND decides to wash that case away from, criminal investigations. The question would be, why would a minister make such a decision to forgo the criminal activity of siphoning $2.5 billion? Because Mr. Mambo,
against the
Zambians, you know what $2.5 billion can do to this economy. You know, if $2.5 billion was pumped into this economy.
You wouldn't
how
be
it
asking
can-
IMF.
You wouldn't be coming to Parliament to ask, Parliament to, support you to borrow a 1 point something billion dollars. So the